Hello, everybody. This is Robyn Vogel, and this is Come Back to Love Radio. We are on KMET, and I am broadcasting today from Costa Rica, from the mountains in Costa Rica. What a thrill to be able to be here and also be connected with each of you that's listening to the show. This show is live on Thursdays at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and also can be listened any place that you listen to your podcasts. So welcome. This is episode number 2, and I'm Robyn Vogel. This episode is honoring, I also want to say celebrating, but regardless, talking about heartbreak as transformation, which is a really big part of the work of Come Back to Love. When your heart breaks open, instead of breaking down, there's an opportunity for transformation, and we're going to talk about that today, how heartbreak can become the beginning of your deepest healing and your most authentic life. This episode is going to be about what happens after life feels like it's falling apart. But first, I'll take a moment to introduce myself, since this is a new show on KMET, and I have a new audience listening in, so it'll take a little bit to get to know me. And so I want to introduce myself. Again, my name is Robyn Vogel, and I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a love and intimacy coach and the author of Come Back to Love, A Path to Healing. That book was published this year, February 2026, by Kohler Books, and can be found anywhere that you buy books online. For over 20 years, I've been helping people do what I had to learn to do myself: heal the past, understand the patterns, and create the kind of love that's actually real. Not the love that looks good on paper, not the love that looks or feels like a roller coaster you can't get off, but the love that feels like, finally, this is what I was looking for. This episode is for you if you have been through a heartbreak, if you have heartache in your life. Come Back to Love is for all of you that have experienced a loss. Perhaps that's divorce or grief from a death or a major transition in life. Perhaps you've experienced a betrayal, abandonment, some kind of disappointment, major disappointment in life. Even aging, change in identity, adult children leaving home. That's a big one for me. Loss of a friendship, illness, loneliness, and just kind of sharing all the different ways that people experience heartache and heartbreak in their lives. It's really universal, isn't it? And the Come Back to Love work and the work that we do together and the things I'm going to talk about on my radio show, again, all have to do with healing the heart and coming back to love. That is a mantra that I use often, because the heartbreak changes us. It changes us each time it happens. And sometimes you try to fix it really quickly, move on really quickly. There's a lot of pressure in our culture to move on. Gosh, don't stay sad too long. Other people get uncomfortable. They want you to move through it quickly. Your mother dies, you take a day off from work, but the boss expects you back at work the next day. Meanwhile, you haven't had a chance to take a breath. There's a lot of hidden shame around grief in our culture. What if heartbreak isn't just something to survive and kind of push through? What if it's an initiation into a deeper life? It certainly has been for me. I'll share a little bit about my story right here. So I had a tragic childhood, I will say that. You can certainly read lots of details in my book, but I'll share here that I had my mother, who died when I was 10 years old in 1976. She had cancer. She actually discovered it herself back in 1972. I was 6 years old at the time. She discovered a lump in her breast, and she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, it's fine. It's nothing. Just, it'll go away. Don't worry about it." So she came home and she reported back to her mom, to my dad, her husband. The doctor said everything's fine. And they both said, "Nuh-uh, go you get a second opinion. Like that doesn't seem right. You should get a second opinion. But I think she was so relieved to get, not a death sentence in that meeting that she just said, no, um, I'm just going to believe this doctor. And and then, hopefully I'll get better. Long story short, she didn't get better. The lump got bigger. She went back to the doctor a year later. And at that point, very sadly, the cancer had metastasized and she had it many different organs in her body. At that point, she did start treatment and she spent 3 years treating, under treatment, I would say, surgeries and chemotherapy and radiation. And it's interesting because I find myself hesitating as I tell you this story because the truth is I was so young, I don't actually know what she went through. I don't know all the specific details. My parents didn't talk about it. The wisdom, quote unquote, of that time was don't talk about it with the kids. Keep it to yourself. We don't want to make the kids feel this or that or the other thing. And so it was like a big secret in my house, which was another trauma and another heartbreak. And so when I asked the question, what if heartbreak isn't just something to survive, but an initiation into a deeper life? Now, certainly for me, it was something to survive for many years. It was so challenging and hard to survive at age 10, 11, 12, 13, right? All those teenage years, it was, oh gosh, it was just like torture. And all I was doing was trying to survive. But once I stepped into more of an adult and the realization that I really needed to start not just surviving, but doing the healing work to heal my own heart, it became clear after a while that this was a very significant initiation into a deeper life. And it has completely changed and guided my life to the work that I'm doing today, which is supporting others in a very large community that I've created in the northeastern part of the United States, but also extending out nationally, internationally, as I've been teaching in various places over the last 25 years. But really inviting people to look at what's holding them back in love and noticing what heartbreaks, what heartaches, what traumas have people been through that are still lingering. And people are, once they see once they notice that they feel stuck in relationship, in love, in intimacy, once they notice that they feel afraid, once they notice that they feel like their heart is closed, or even they might not know what the reason is, but just a feeling of stuck and not having the intimacy in their lives that they want, that's when they come to the work of Come Back to Love, to do the healing, to open their hearts again to themselves so that they can live a life full of love, whatever that looks like. I always tell my clients and my workshop participants, once you do the healing work and you come back to love with yourself and you open up to such a deep place of self-love inside yourself and you feel more aligned with yourself, you get to choose. Do you want to be in a relationship or no? Do you want to have children? What kind of work do you want to do? Do you want to change your work? Where do you want to live? Like, once you're really that deeply connected to yourself and aligned with your true, authentic self, that's the place to make choices from. And that's an incredible place to make choices from, versus when you're all over the place and running a million miles an hour and disconnected from yourself, dissociated from your body. It's really hard to make good, healthy choices for yourself when you're feeling that. So heartbreak and trauma affect us in very deep ways. That's obvious. But I want to say that, there's a lot of talk about nervous system work these days. Reset your nervous system. And that's because when we've had trauma, our nervous systems are haywire. And I didn't know that when I first started doing my own work. I was doing mostly emotional work. I became a psychotherapist, but I couldn't quite get to the end point that I wanted. I kept making progress. Everything I did was so helpful, and I'll share more about the things that I did for myself in this radio show over the coming weeks. But it wasn't until I started doing the nervous system recovery work that I finally healed some big symptoms that were just in my way. Wow, that was majorly life-changing when I came across the nervous system. I almost said neuroplasticity because those are the tools that I teach and that I'll be teaching on this radio show, some of them that you can use right away. That really changed things for me in a very significant way. Another piece of what happens when there's been a trauma or a significant heartbreak is we put up protective walls. Now, often we need those protective walls when the trauma or event is happening. When my mother was sick and going to, chemotherapy and feeling ill and feeling angry and taking it out some ways just in her mood and her energy in the house towards me, I had to put protection up. That's a good thing. When we put protection up when we're young, when we're going through something really painful, those protective parts are so valuable. As an internal family systems therapist, I work a lot with parts, and we say there are no bad parts. We need the protection at the time that we need it. However, after a betrayal or a loss has happened and we put up some protection, we then need later on to look at those protective parts and to do the healing work to lower those walls and barriers and open the heart. So that's really deep work and such important work. Often what happens when there's a heartbreak or a heartache is we lose trust. There's a loss of trust. Sometimes we don't trust ourselves, and often we don't trust others. In my case, I lost trust in adults. Like, they lied to us. I had to recover that trust over time. I lost trust in love because I was, your mother is like your first love, your most primary love relationship. I lost trust in love. For those of you that have had a betrayal, which many of my clients have or have been with a narcissistic partner, regaining trust is so important to your process of healing. There's sometimes an identity collapse. Like, I thought I was someone who chose well in relationship. But when I look back at my life, I've chosen 2 narcissistic partners, for example, just continuing with that example. So there's a piece of identity, that's just one example, that sometimes collapses and falls apart. And then, there's a rising out of that. There can be emotional numbness, and that relates to the protective walls. But there can be, very much so, a shutting down in fear from the trauma, from the heartbreak of the past. And that, of course, numbness, we say in internal family systems work, numb is a part. It's a protective part. So again, we do the healing work and figure out, what to do with that in terms of healing and opening up, coming back to your authentic self, and doing the healing work that's necessary. All right, stay with me. This is Robyn Vogel. We are on KMET Radio. We are Come Back to Love today, Thursdays, live at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern every week. I'm talking about heartbreak and the things that heartbreak actually does to us. And one of the last pieces I want to mention right now is overfunctioning. And if you're identifying with any of these things I'm saying, reach out, because these are all the things I actually have experienced in my life because of my own heartbreak. And overfunctioning is one of them. And I will say I am still working on that one. Overfunctioning, overdoing, overworking, trying to make other people happy, trying to make everybody happy, trying to be the best, the most perfect, fill in the blank. If this is you, I'm with you. And, just another really important thing to look at when it comes to healing the heart and coming back to love. Because when we're overfunctioning, we're actually disconnected from ourselves. We're overriding fatigue. We're overriding our natural rhythms, our natural pace, which may be way slower. We override symptoms from our bodies. We get sick. We hurt ourselves. All of these things because of the disconnect. So overfunctioning is a really big piece and something to just think about in terms of looking at yourself and asking yourself, like, am I someone who overfunctions? So there's also other pieces, of our lives, of course, that are impacted by trauma. There's attachment, there's anxiety, there's the good girl conditioning, which is kind of like overfunctioning. And there's the abandonment wounds, of course, that we'll talk more about down the road. But all of these are, ways that heartbreak has impacted. And what I want to talk about in the second half of the show today is I want to introduce you to the healing methodology that I have developed over the last 25 years of working not only with hundreds of individuals and couples, but also working with myself. Because, like I said earlier, I teach, I share, I facilitate work that has worked for me. Otherwise, I can't teach you. I can't guide. I guide from my own experience, from the things that I have spent a lot of time with, not just a quick, oh yeah, I tried this one thing and it worked, and now I'm going to teach it. No, I really have spent a lot of time, years and years and years, healing and really looking at what has had impact. So I have developed something called the 4 gates approach. And actually, in my book, Come Back to Love, A Path to Healing, the 4 gates approach are introduced and also gone into in the book with some depth, of course. Each chapter has an introduction to one of the gates and then exercises to do the work with yourself. And then, of course, if you need support, you reach out to your own therapist or a coach or to me. I always offer 30 minutes of free consultation. So you can find that link very easily, or you can find it on my website, which is just simply comebacktolove.com. So Beyond the Emotion is gate 1. And actually, before I speak about the gates, I just want to invite all of my listeners in this moment to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. You might close your eyes for a moment and visualize yourself on a path. See a beautiful path, whatever that beautiful path is for you. For me, it's definitely outside. It's dirt. It's surrounded by green. It's got beautiful benches and trees and berries and perhaps fruit trees, since I'm here in Costa Rica right now. And I see that path, as the path to love. And I invite you to do the same. See the path as the path to love. And as you're walking down the path, you will eventually come to each gate, 4 of them. And when you stop at the first one, I'll invite you to do some inner work. And when we get to gate 2, the same, gate 3, gate 4. Now, they're not necessarily linear, but our minds like linearity. So I created them as a linear path because it's an easier framework for all of us to use. I want to invite you to see yourself walking down the path and stop for a moment at this first beautiful gate that you come to. The first gate I call Beyond the Emotion. Now, as a psychotherapist, of course, I do a lot of emotional healing work with people. And as I said earlier, I was doing a lot for myself, and it wasn't the whole story, which is really how these gates, I want to say, were channeled so that the methodology could be created for people to use. So Beyond the Emotion, though, really important, because when you've had loss and you're feeling stuck in your life, there's probably more emotional work to do. In my work, like I said, I use internal family systems work strongly. I use many other things for emotional healing. But learning how to be with heartbreak, move through heartbreak at your own pace, move through loss at your own pace, without becoming consumed by it. You might be looking at emotional overwhelm, a lot of grief, how to alchemize the emotions. Healing isn't about avoiding the emotions. It's actually about learning not to disappear inside the emotions, and also not to block them so that they can't be expressed. So the first gate, Beyond the Emotion, really important. And we spend a lot of time there, as you can imagine. The second gate I call Beyond the Mind, which is moving beyond limiting beliefs. It's moving beyond obsessive thinking. It's moving beyond replaying the past over and over and over again in your mind. It's moving beyond self-blame, moving beyond places that you don't love yourself, moving beyond a mental way of kind of controlling your pain, if that makes sense to you. These limiting beliefs can get, they dictate our lives. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm not choosable. Nobody likes me. I'm too broken. Any of those thoughts come from the trauma from the past, and they get stuck. They're neural pathways in the brain that get stuck. And they're actually stuck until you use the tools of neuroplasticity, which again I will say more about, and you can learn more about certainly by connecting with me. But these tools are so powerful, and they will stop those thoughts in their tracks. Honestly, it felt like magic to me when I did it myself. So if you're like ruminating or overanalyzing or really attached to a story in your life that just is guiding everything, if you're trying to make meaning and over make meaning in your mind from the trauma from the past that you've experienced, I invite you to really get to know these limiting beliefs. So you know what they are, and once you know what they are, they can be healed. Yeah, the healing begins when we loosen our grip on these thoughts and on the story. The third gate, just briefly, is beyond the human. And that beyond the human is about looking at your being as a soul, looking at spiritual initiation, where heartbreak can become spiritual initiation, looking at what your soul is supposed to learn in this lifetime, right now, on the planet, right now. This is very powerful work. It invites you to surrender to what's true. It invites your soul to grow and evolve. This particular gate teaches you something about your purpose for being here, and it adds grace. It invites an awakening. There's a sacred transformation that happens when we do the work of gate 3, beyond the human. The fourth gate has to do with the body, including the body, finding out and discovering how trauma is still being held in your body, doing somatic practices, understanding why your hip hurts, your right hip and not your left, your knees, whatever it is, however your body is holding the trauma and the heartbreak. You might have numbness in your body. It might not be pain. This part of our work talks about sensuality and how that might be a challenge for you. It talks about safety in the body. It talks about yes and no and maybe, and how to really navigate and know from the inside out how to feel safe, how to regulate yourself, and how to reconnect to your body so you have pleasure, so you have vitality, so that you make aligned choices for yourself. The body remembers heartbreak, but it also remembers how to heal. So those are the 4 gates. That's the 4-gate approach to come back to love. A shattered heart is not proof you failed at love or you failed in your life. Sometimes it's the breaking open required to become more fully yourself. I invite you to check out my book, Come Back to Love. I invite you to check out my website of the same name. Feel free to join my newsletter list. You actually can download the first chapter of my book for free on my website, Come Back to Love. And also, of course, 30 minutes free consultation. I really invite you to self-identify, to notice where you resonated with the things that I shared today about my own story, about how heartbreak changes us and impacts us in such a significant way. And just notice if you feel resonant with this work. I invite you to continue listening and continue exploring. This has been the second episode of Come Back to Love, and I'm so glad you were here. If something stirred in you today, if you felt something open or recognized yourself in what we explored, I want you to know that you don't have to figure this out alone. Again, I offer a free 30-minute private conversation, just the two of us, no agenda, except to understand where you are and what might be possible for you. You can book yours again at comebacktolove.com. If you're ready for that conversation, please reach out. And if not, come back to me, Come Back to Love next Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on KMET. I will be here. Again, this show is called Come Back to Love because I believe with everything in me that love is not something you find. It's something you return to. It's already in you. It already is in you. It's always been in you. We're just finding our way back. I'm Robyn Vogel. Be gentle with yourself. Love is possible, and it starts with coming back to you. I'll see you next week.